I remember the exact weight of that morning before I remember the colors. The air felt heavier than it should have, thick with late summer humidity and something else I couldn't name at the time. Maybe it was nerves. Maybe it was memory. Or maybe it was the quiet instinct that comes from being a father for nearly 4 decades, the kind of instinct that never fully turns off, no matter how grown your child becomes. The wedding was scheduled for noon, right in the backyard of our family home. The same place where my daughter, Emily, had learned to ride a bike. Where she'd scraped her knees, cried into my shirt, and later brought home report cards, boyfriends, and eventually dreams bigger than this small town ever felt. White chairs were arranged in neat rows across the lawn. Strings of lights hung from the old oak tree I'd planted when Emily was 5. The tree was taller now. Stronger. Like her. People kept telling me how lucky I was. How beautiful everything looked. How proud I must be. And I was. But pride doesn't cancel worry. It just learns how to stand beside it quietly. Emily's mother, my wife of 32 years, had passed away 4 years earlier. Sudden aneurysm. One phone call. One hospital hallway. One moment where life split cleanly into before and after. Emily and I had learned how to grieve together, then learned how to live again without ever fully filling the space her mother left behind. So when Emily met Ryan, I was relieved. More than relieved. I was grateful. Ryan was charming in that polished way people from bigger cities often are. He worked in corporate consulting, traveled often, spoke confidently about investments, growth, opportunity. He shook hands firmly, looked people in the eye, and always remembered names. He also noticed things. Not just people, but objects. Assets. Structures. The first time he came over for dinner, he asked how old the house was. The second time, he asked how much land surrounded it. The third time, he joked about how properties like this would be goldmines someday. I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, Emily was glowing in a way I hadn't seen since she was a child. She laughed more. Smiled easier. Talked about the future with certainty, not fear. And she deserved that. The engagement happened fast. 6 months after they met, Ryan proposed on a weekend trip out of state. Emily called me from the hotel room, breathless and crying and laughing all at once. I said yes before she even finished asking if it was okay. Of course it was okay. A father wants to believe he's raised someone strong enough to choose well. The wedding planning consumed everything after that. Emily threw herself into details, maybe to fill the spaces grief still lingered in. She chose flowers her mother loved. Music her mother had played in the kitchen. Even the date was significant, the anniversary of her parents' first date. I helped where I could. Paid for most of it quietly. I'd always done that. Lived modestly. Saved carefully. Provided without spectacle. Ryan thanked me often. Almost too often. Emily's lucky to have you, he'd say. I hope I can be half the parent you've been, he'd add. Compliments land differently when you've lived long enough. You learn the difference between appreciation and performance, even when you can't articulate it. The week before the wedding, I noticed Emily growing quieter. Not unhappy. Not withdrawn. Just thoughtful. She'd stare out windows. Lose track of conversations. Smile a second too late. I asked her if she was nervous. She said, a little. That seemed normal enough. The night before the wedding, the rehearsal dinner went smoothly. Toasts were made. Laughter filled the air. Ryan spoke about commitment, about partnership, about building something lasting. I watched Emily's face while he spoke. She smiled. But her hands trembled slightly when she lifted her glass. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone on the back porch. The same porch where I'd once rocked her to sleep during thunderstorms. I listened to the cicadas and tried to convince myself that the tightness in my chest was just sentiment. Parents aren't meant to control their children's futures. They're meant to prepare them for it. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright. Emily stayed in her childhood bedroom with her bridesmaids. Laughter drifted down the hallway. Makeup brushes clicked. Music played softly. Ryan arrived late morning, already dressed, already confident. He shook my hand again. Thanked me again. Told me everything looked perfect. You must be proud, he said. I am, I replied. And I meant it. Guests began to arrive. Friends. Family. Neighbors who'd watched Emily grow up. They hugged me, told me my daughter looked beautiful, said how proud my wife would be. I nodded, smiled, swallowed. When the music changed, and Emily appeared at the top of the path leading into the yard, the world seemed to pause. She was stunning. Not just in the dress, but in the way she carried herself. Calm. Composed. Almost solemn. She took my arm. You okay? I whispered. She nodded. I am now. That should have comforted me. Instead, it unsettled me. We walked slowly down the aisle. Every step felt heavier than the last. I searched her face for fear, for doubt, for any sign I should stop everything. I saw none. At the altar, I kissed her cheek and stepped back into the front row. The officiant began speaking about love. About partnership. About trust. Ryan watched Emily like he'd already won something. Then came the vows. Emily went first. Her voice was steady. Her words were sincere. She spoke about kindness, patience, and choosing each other even when it was hard. Ryan smiled broadly. Then it was his turn. He began confidently. Spoke about ambition, growth, building a future together. And then, just before he finished, Emily's hand moved. Slowly. Deliberately. She reached into her bouquet. For a moment, I thought she was nervous. Adjusting something. Instead, she pulled out a small folded note. The music stopped. The officiant paused. Emily turned away from Ryan and walked toward me. My heart dropped into my stomach. She placed the note into my hand. Her fingers were cold. Her eyes were shining, not with joy, but with something far more fragile. Fear. I opened the note. It read, Dad, please help me. Time fractured. I looked up at her. Truly looked. Her smile was gone. Her breathing shallow. Her shoulders rigid. What's wrong? I asked quietly. Ryan stepped forward. Emily? What's going on? She didn't look at him. I can't do this, she said. Not like this. Murmurs rippled through the guests. Ryan laughed nervously. Hey, you're just overwhelmed. This is a lot. She shook her head. No. I heard you. Last night. On the phone. Silence fell heavy. Ryan's smile tightened. You misunderstood. I didn't, she said. You were talking about me. About my dad. About how once we were married, everything would be easier. People shifted in their seats. Ryan's voice dropped. Emily, this isn't the time. You said he was old. That he wouldn't notice. That once you had access, you could manage things. Gasps echoed. My hand shook, but my voice did not. Emily, what did you hear? She swallowed hard. He said the house. The land. He said once you trusted him, everything would be in place. Ryan stepped closer, his hand reaching for her arm. Stop. I moved between them without thinking. Don't touch her, I said. The officiant backed away. Ryan's composure cracked. This is insane. You're humiliating me. Emily's voice broke. You said I was naive. That I'd sign anything you put in front of me. The words hit me like physical blows. I felt something ancient rise in my chest. Not anger. Not panic. Clarity. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. "Sheriff," I said calmly. "You can come out now." Two men stood from the back row. Our county sheriff. His deputy. Ryan froze. "What is this?" he demanded. The sheriff approached. "Ryan Collins, we're going to ask you to come with us." "For what?" Ryan snapped. "Fraud. Attempted financial exploitation. And we'd like to ask you some questions about recorded conversations." Ryan turned to Emily, his face contorting. "You set me up?" She shook her head, tears streaming. "I prayed he'd protect me." The sheriff guided Ryan away as his protests grew louder, more desperate. Guests stood, whispered, stared. I wrapped my arms around my daughter as her knees buckled. "It's okay," I whispered. "You're safe." The rest of the day blurred together. Statements. Police cars. Guests leaving quietly. Flowers wilting in the heat. That evening, Emily and I sat on the porch, still in wedding clothes, the sun dipping low behind the trees. "I didn't know how to tell you," she said. "I was scared I was wrong." "You weren't," I said. "And even if you had been, asking for help was the right thing." She leaned into me, exhausted. "I heard him weeks ago," she admitted. Small things. Comments. Jokes. I kept telling myself I was overthinking. "You trusted your instincts when it mattered," I said. "I trusted you," she replied. Weeks later, charges were filed. Evidence reviewed. Conversations uncovered. Ryan's confidence vanished in court. Emily went to therapy. Took time off work. Learned how to breathe again. Life didn't snap back to normal. It reshaped itself. One evening, months later, Emily asked, "Dad, why didn't you ever tell me how much we had?" I smiled softly. "Because money changes how people see you. I wanted you to be chosen for who you are, not what you might inherit." She nodded slowly. I think Mom would have agreed. I know she would have. We sat in silence, watching the lights flicker on as dusk settled. The wedding never happened. But something else did. My daughter chose herself. And she trusted me enough to ask for help when it mattered most. That, I've learned, is the real measure of love. Not the ceremony. Not the vows. But the quiet moment when fear meets trust, and a child knows her father will stand between her and the world without hesitation. I would do it again. Every time. The days that followed were strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet in the way a house feels after a storm has passed through it and taken something with it. The chairs were gone from the lawn. The flowers had been cleared away. The oak tree still stood, unmoved, its lights taken down, its branches swaying like nothing unusual had happened beneath them. Emily stayed with me. She slept in her old bedroom, the one with the faint star stickers still clinging to the ceiling. At night, I'd hear her pacing softly, the floorboards creaking the same way they used to when she was a teenager sneaking to the kitchen for water. Some habits don't disappear, even when life changes everything around them. We didn't talk much at first. Grief has different shapes. Sometimes it's loud and desperate. Sometimes it's quiet and private. Emily's was the latter. She spent hours sitting in the garden her mother had planted, fingers brushing over leaves, eyes unfocused, lost somewhere between anger and relief. I let her be. A father doesn't need to fix everything. Sometimes he just needs to stay. A week after the wedding that wasn't, Emily finally asked, "Can you tell me everything?" So I did. I told her about the phone call I'd overheard accidentally when Ryan thought he was alone on speaker. About the legal consultation. About the recordings. About how long I'd been afraid to say anything because I didn't want to take her choice away. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said quietly, "I hate him." "I know," I replied. "But I hate myself more," she added. For not seeing it sooner. I turned to her. No. You saw it. You just hoped it wasn't real. She nodded, tears welling. I wanted the happy ending so badly. So did I said. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Patterns emerged. Other families. Other near misses. Ryan wasn't careless, he was confident. Confident people make the same mistakes over and over because they believe charm will always save them. This time, it didn't. When the charges were formally announced, Emily didn't react the way I thought she would. There was no satisfaction. No vindication. Just a long exhale, like she'd been holding her breath for months without realizing it. I feel empty, she admitted. That's normal, I told her. You're grieving a future that almost happened. She returned to work slowly. Took fewer calls. Learned how to say no again. Learned how to trust her instincts instead of silencing them for the sake of peace. Sometimes, late at night, she'd sit across from me at the kitchen table and ask questions she'd never asked before. How did you and Mom know you were right for each other? I smiled at that one. We didn't always, I said. We chose to be right for each other. She liked that answer. Months passed. The season changed. Leaves fell. Snow came early that year. One evening, as we watched it settle across the fields, Emily said, I used to think love was about certainty. And now? I asked. Now I think it's about safety. I didn't respond. There was nothing to add. Eventually, she moved back into her own place. Life resumed its quieter rhythm. The garden grew wild again. The oak tree stood through another winter. Every so often, Emily would still reach for her bouquet memory, not the flowers, but the note. The moment where fear became honesty. Where trust outweighed embarrassment. She kept a copy of that note in her wallet. Not as a reminder of what she escaped, but as proof of what she was capable of. And me? I learned something too. That protecting your child doesn't end when they grow up. It just changes shape. Sometimes, it looks like stepping in front of danger. Sometimes, it looks like waiting quietly until they're ready to ask for help. And sometimes, it looks like reading 3 simple words written in shaking ink and knowing, without hesitation, that you would burn the world down if it meant keeping them safe. I'd make the same choice again. Without question. There were moments afterward when the world tried to pretend nothing had happened. People in town would smile politely, ask how Emily was doing, comment on the weather, the harvest, the price of gas. They avoided the subject the same way people always do when something uncomfortable brushes too close to their own lives. I didn't blame them. Not everyone knows how to sit with broken plans. Emily handled it better than most. Not because she was strong in the way movies portray strength, but because she was honest. Some mornings she woke up determined, made coffee, went for a run, talked about new projects at work. Other mornings she sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing, her hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. On those mornings, I didn't ask questions. I just sat with her. One afternoon, about 2 months after the wedding, she surprised me. Dad, she said, standing in the doorway of my study, do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't written that note? I looked up from my papers. Sometimes. What do you think would have happened? I considered the question carefully. I think you would have gone through with it. I think you would have tried to make it work. And I think, slowly, you would have disappeared. She swallowed. I felt that. Toward the end. Like I was shrinking. That admission hurt more than anything else she'd said. I thought love was supposed to feel like compromise, she continued. But it started feeling like erosion. That's how you know, I said quietly. She nodded, as if something heavy had finally settled into place. The legal proceedings dragged on, as they always do. Depositions. Statements. Meetings with lawyers who spoke in measured tones and careful language. Ryan's confidence dissolved under scrutiny. His words, once so smooth, now sounded hollow when repeated back to him by strangers in suits. Emily attended one hearing. Just one. She sat beside me, back straight, face calm. When Ryan glanced at her, she didn't look away, but she didn't look back either. She looked past him, as if he were already a memory she'd decided not to revisit. Afterward, in the parking lot, she let out a breath and said, "I don't need to go back." And she didn't. Life has a way of reclaiming space once you stop feeding the wrong things. Emily started painting again, something she hadn't done since college. Canvases began appearing around the house, leaning against walls, splashed with color and emotion she didn't yet have words for. One night, she showed me a piece she'd finished. It was abstract. Layers of light and dark, sharp lines breaking into softer curves. "What is it?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "It's the moment before I handed you the note. I studied it for a long time. It feels like courage," I said. She blinked, then looked away, embarrassed. "I didn't feel courageous." "Courage rarely feels like courage," I replied. "It usually feels like fear with a decision attached." She laughed quietly at that. Spring came, slow and stubborn. The garden bloomed again, untamed and beautiful. We expanded it, just like I'd promised myself I would. New roses. A stone bench beneath the oak tree. Emily helped me plant them. Dirt under her nails. Sun on her face. One evening, as we sat on that bench watching the sky turn orange and pink, she said, "I don't think I want a big wedding anymore. If I ever do it again." If? I teased gently. She shrugged. "I'm not in a hurry." "That's wise," I said. She leaned her head against my shoulder, the way she used to when she was small. "Thank you for not saving me too soon." I stiffened slightly. "What do you mean?" "If you'd confronted him early on, I might have defended him. I might have chosen him just to prove I could." She paused. "Letting me come to you, that mattered." I didn't answer right away. There are things a parent does that feel like inaction but take more restraint than force ever could. "I trusted you," I said finally. That's all. The world moved on, as it always does. New headlines. New scandals. New stories that replaced ours in the collective attention. But in our house, something had permanently shifted. Emily stood taller. Asked harder questions. Trusted her discomfort instead of explaining it away. And I slept easier. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about that note. About how close everything came to going wrong. About how 3 words changed the course of both our lives. "Dad, please help me." People talk about independence as if it means never needing anyone. But I've learned that real independence is knowing exactly who to turn to when the ground starts to give way. Emily knew. And I will always be grateful she trusted me enough to ask. We never did take down the oak tree. Its roots run deep now, woven into the land and the history of this place. It's weathered storms, droughts, long winters, and careless summers. So have we. And if there's one thing I know for certain, it's this. Love isn't proven in perfect ceremonies or polished promises. It's proven in the quiet moments when fear surfaces and someone stands up without hesitation and says, "You're not alone." That's what I did that day. That's what I'll always do. For my daughter. Time did what it always does. It softened the sharpest edges without erasing the lesson. A year passed. Not quickly. Not easily. But honestly. Emily didn't rush to replace what she'd lost. She didn't fill the silence with distractions or drown it in noise. Instead, she let herself feel it. The disappointment. The embarrassment. The anger that would surface out of nowhere, usually when she least expected it. Sometimes it came while she was driving. Sometimes while folding laundry. Sometimes while laughing with friends, when joy itself felt unfamiliar. When that happened, she didn't apologize for it. That was new. She learned how to tell people no without explaining herself. Learned how to leave rooms that felt wrong. Learned how to sit with discomfort instead of bargaining with it. And I watched her become someone even stronger than the woman I thought I'd raised. One afternoon, she came by with a cardboard box. "What's that?" I asked. She set it on the kitchen table and opened it. Inside were remnants of the wedding that never happened. Place cards. Ribbons. A framed seating chart. "I don't want to keep these," she said. "But I don't want to throw them away either." So we burned them. Out back, in the old fire pit, one piece at a time. Paper curled and blackened. Ink vanished. Ash drifted upward into the sky. When it was over, Emily wiped her hands on her jeans and said, "That feels better." I nodded. Closure usually does. She started traveling after that. Nothing extravagant. Just weekends away. Small towns. Long walks. Places where no one knew her story. When she came back, she brought pieces of herself with her, calmer, steadier, more certain. One evening, over dinner, she said, "I don't think I was afraid of being alone before. I think I was afraid of being wrong." "That's a heavy thing to carry," I replied. "I put down a lot of weight," she said with a small smile. The trial concluded quietly. No dramatic headlines. No public spectacle. Just consequences delivered in measured sentences and legal language. Ryan disappeared from our lives entirely, the way people like him often do when they can no longer extract value. Emily didn't ask about him again. She didn't need to. On the anniversary of what would have been her wedding day, we didn't mark it. We didn't avoid it either. We treated it like any other day, coffee in the morning, work to do, sunlight moving across the fields. That night, we sat on the porch as the sky darkened. "Do you ever think about Mom on days like this?" Emily asked. "Every day," I said. She smiled softly. "I think she'd be proud of us." "I think she'd be proud of you," I corrected. Emily reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm proud of you too, Dad." I looked at her then, not as the little girl she once was, not as the bride she almost became, but as the woman standing firmly in her own life. And I felt something settle in my chest. Peace. Not the kind that comes from things going perfectly, but the kind that comes from knowing you can survive when they don't. The oak tree swayed in the evening breeze. The garden rustled softly. Life continued, imperfect and honest. And if I've learned anything through all of this, it's that the most powerful words aren't vows spoken at an altar or promises made for an audience. They're the ones whispered in moments of fear. The ones that say, "I trust you. I need you. Please help me." Those words don't weaken us. They save us. And I will always be grateful that my daughter knew that before it was too late. Even now, there are moments when the memory returns without warning. A bouquet at the grocery store. A folded note tucked into a book. A father walking his daughter down an aisle in a movie scene we happened to catch while flipping channels. Emily doesn't flinch anymore. She notices the feeling, acknowledges it, and lets it pass. That, to me, is how I know she's healing. Pain that's been faced loses its power to ambush you. It becomes part of the landscape instead of a hidden trap. One evening, nearly 2 years after the wedding that never was, Emily came over for dinner with a quiet excitement in her voice. "There's someone I want you to meet," she said, carefully, as if testing the words. I didn't ask questions. I didn't raise an eyebrow. I didn't warn her. I simply said, "Whenever you're ready." That was another thing she'd learned: readiness doesn't come from permission. It comes from self-trust. When I did meet him months later, it was nothing like before. No polished speeches. No calculated charm. No questions about property, money, or futures that hadn't yet earned the right to be discussed. He asked about Emily's paintings. About the garden. About her mother. And when he shook my hand, it felt like a greeting, not a performance. After they left that night, Emily lingered in the doorway. So, she asked. I smiled. He listens. She smiled back, relief washing over her face. That's what I noticed too. Whether that relationship lasts forever or only a season doesn't matter as much as it once would have. Emily no longer builds her identity around permanence. She builds it around alignment. As for me, I've slowed down in ways I didn't expect. Not out of fear, but out of contentment. The ranch feels quieter now, but not lonely. Full in a different way. I still sit on the porch most evenings. Still watch the light shift across the land. Still think about the thin line between what almost happened and what did. Sometimes, I take out that note. The original. Emily framed it for me last year, a simple wooden frame, no glass glare, just paper and ink and truth. Dad, please help me. 3 lines. Uneven handwriting. A lifetime of trust. People talk about legacy like it's something you leave behind when you're gone. Property. Money. Heirlooms. Stories told at funerals. But I've come to believe legacy is built in moments like that one. Quiet moments. Frightening moments. Moments where someone chooses honesty over comfort and reaches out instead of pretending everything is fine. That note didn't just change my daughter's life. It changed mine. It reminded me that strength isn't measured by how much you can endure alone, but by how willing you are to be vulnerable with the people who've earned your trust. If there's one thing I hope Emily carries with her for the rest of her life, it's this. Love should never require you to disappear. Commitment should never cost you your voice. And asking for help is not failure, it's wisdom. The oak tree is older now. So am I. We've both weathered enough seasons to know that storms don't ask for permission before they arrive. But roots matter. And ours are deep. When I think back to that day, the music stopping, the note in my hand, the world holding its breath, I don't feel sadness anymore. I feel gratitude. Gratitude that my daughter trusted herself. Gratitude that she trusted me. Gratitude that the truth found its way out before it was buried under vows and applause. Not every story ends with a wedding. Some end with something far more important. A father standing up. A daughter choosing herself. And a quiet understanding that love, real love, will always protect before it promises. That's the story I'll carry with me. For the rest of my life. The house was quiet again, the good kind of quiet. Not empty. Not lonely. Just settled. On my desk, near the window that looks out over the land Emily once ran across barefoot, the frame sits exactly where the light hits it in the late afternoon. I never planned it that way. It just ended up there. Some things do. The note hasn't faded. The ink is still dark, the paper still creased where her fingers folded it in half, over and over, while she stood at the edge of a life she almost stepped into. Sometimes I catch myself staring at it longer than I intend to. Not because I'm afraid. But because I'm grateful. Grateful that fear didn't win. Grateful that silence didn't win. Grateful that love showed up in the form it's supposed to take when it matters most. Emily comes by every Sunday now. It's our thing. We cook together. Argue gently about recipes. Sit outside when the weather allows. Talk about ordinary things. Work. Friends. Painting she's planning but hasn't started yet. She laughs easily these days. That's how I know she's truly free. Not because the past stopped existing, but because it stopped defining her. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the fields gold, she stood up from the porch and said, almost casually, "If I ever get married again, I don't think I want anything fancy." I looked at her. No? She smiled. I think I'd rather just walk up to the person I love and choose them. No audience. No pressure. Just honesty. I nodded. That sounds right. She paused, then added, "And I'd want you there." Always, I thought. But I didn't say it. Some things don't need to be spoken. When she left that night, I stayed outside a little longer. The stars came out slowly, one by one, the way they always do. The oak tree creaked softly in the breeze. The garden rested, patient and alive, waiting for another season. Life had given us a moment where everything could have gone wrong. And instead, it gave us something better. A reminder. That trust isn't weakness. That love isn't blind. That asking for help doesn't make you small, it makes you brave. That note wasn't a plea. It was a choice. And I will carry that with me, quietly, proudly, for as long as I have breath in my body. Because on that day, in front of everyone, when the music stopped and the world held its breath, my daughter didn't lose anything. She found herself. And I found, once again, the deepest purpose of being a father. To stand ready. To listen. And to protect. Not with control. Not with fear. But with unwavering love. Every time. No matter what.